Now we have to put the shading on these leaves. We want to get these leaves and the stem and everything to come to life. So we need to put some shading in. Now I'm going to shade the left side and that spot above the skull on the stem. And I'm going to shade our leaves at the base where they would connect to the stem and where the flowers overlap them. These are not pretty, perfect floats. These are just getting a little color under there. They don't have to be perfect. We just want a nice little gradient in there. I'm going to use my mop, soften this a little bit. There we go. Get up underneath those petals. And remember what I keep telling, when you're floating, get that whole chisel edge on the surface. So you're not just using the tip of the brush. Get that whole chisel edge on the surface, just like that. That's what gives you those nice smooth floats. It lets you lay down color much more evenly, and it gives you something to blend into. If your surface is wet because your brush was laying on it, it gives you something to blend into. So here we go. And then that little leaf there is getting a little float right at the base where it would join the leaf. So I've got that first shading in. I'm going to dry this, and then we're going to shade the center vein of each of these leaves, just to give them some shape. This is what gives them shape. So, little float. Oh, goodness, way too much paint in the brush. There we go. Out to the point. Remember, use the whole chisel edge of the brush to get that float in. There we go. So our little leaves now have center veins. Still not looking grand, but they're getting there. So we're going to start building some highlights onto these leaves. Now ordinarily I would use a lighter value green, something like a margarita or an olive or something with a little bit of white in it, something with a little more opacity. But in this case, I'm going to use these. I absolutely love these. They can be very funky and very off the charts, but when you're using them as a highlight color, because they are kind of transparent, they rely heavily on the base color. So you're not putting down 10 tons of color. It's not fully opaque. It also makes it very easy to control because this color is transparent. It doesn't stay on there chalky, and it goes on really, really bright, but then it settles down as it dries. And so it's a little bit more subdued, and you end up with this really wonderful highlight. These really vibrant, bright highlights. And they look so nice. I just love how they look. And they play nice. They play nice with other colors, as you're going to see shortly, because I'm going to use them to highlight the roses as well. And it's going to make a significant difference. So there's that first highlight using the neon. love this color. This thermal green is just so pretty. So as it's drying, it's becoming just a little more subtle. It's not an in your face, even though the color itself, when you squirt it out of the bottle, is rather obnoxious or even noxious. When you use it to float on highlights like so, it's remarkably subtle. And so you get really nice vibrancy of color, but the highlights are subtle. They're not screaming out at you, which I rather like. And I like that I can layer colors one on top of the other. And so I get this really nice, bright, bold highlight. Pardon me. Oh, goodness. Oh, heavens. Pardon me. As you can tell, I'm still dealing with allergies. So I've got a couple of coats on there, and I love how vibrant, look how vibrant that is. Now the fun part is we're going to mix a little bit of that neon green with a little bit of warm white. And I love that you can do this. It maintains that vibrancy, that brightness. It just becomes a bit more opaque and a little lighter in color, but not by much. And that little lighter is what's going to do this for us. So I'm using a small quantity of that neon green, and I'm mixing it with a little bit of warm white. And this is my outlining color. And it's also the color I'm going to use to connect vines and tendrils. It's what I do the little curlicues with, and I outline my leaves with, and it just gives a little bit of light, a little vibrancy, but it sticks to that really in your face green. And I love that it adds just a little bit of sparkle to the edges of the leaves. Just like that. And you can make those little lines at the edges of the leaves. They can be a bit squiggly if you like. They don't have to be perfect. And if you like it even softer looking, you can go back and do it again. I love how it looks with those little leaves. So I can come out and I can do those little squiggly lines. And I love that it takes on that loose vine look. I love that. I also want to bring in a little vine. I like that little curlicue. And it's such a simple way to finish off those leaves, and they look so pretty when they're done that way. So we only have a couple of things left to do on this piece. So the two fluorescent or neon colors that I'm using for these roses are these. This is Sizzling Pink and Torrid Orange. Both of them are very glow-in-the-dark colors. Or I guess under black light would be the word to look for. So this is the color we're using. I'm going to use the pink by itself at first. Then I'm going to come back in and use the Torrid Orange over top, just to brighten a few spots. But it has a similar effect on the roses that the neons had on the leaves. It isn't an in-your-face look, but it's nice and bright. So I have that neon pink, that Torrid Orange. These are the colors I'm going to use on these roses. And I'm floating the outside edges. Now, when you first do it, it's really obnoxious. but it's so fun. And it makes these roses look so bright. But they do, as they dry, become a little less obnoxious. And I think it's that in your face obnoxious thing that really appeals to me. I know you've probably never heard anybody refer to a color as being obnoxious, but this one truly is. It is an in-your-face, look-at-me color. And look what it does for that country red. It just goes pow. But as it dries, it's going to become a little less garish and a little softer looking. But it still has a little bit of punch. And so I love what it does for these roses. And you don't have to be super neat and tidy with these floats, because most of it is going to be a little on the transparent side anyway. So you just want to make sure that you get some color out at the edge of the petals. The rest isn't really a concern. There we go. So I've got, look at that, wow. Now I'm going to dry this. And you see, it's already coming down. The red is still nice and bright, but it isn't quite as in your face as it started out. Now I'm using the dirty brush, and I'm picking up a little bit of that torrid orange. And I want to bring out a little of that torrid orange just to the edges, like so, just to the very edge. Again, don't worry about getting this absolutely perfect. These are Halloween roses. They're not meant to be perfect. They're going to look a little garish anyway. Look at that. I love it. Oops. I put my finger in the white paint. I love that torrid orange. So if you take a little of that torrid orange and just pop that in a few places at the edges of the petals, it just sort of brightens a few of the highlights. And if you find that the orange is perhaps a little too obnoxious for you, you can mix a little of the neon pink with it, which I really like. I love it mixed together. That little bit of orange, it just takes on a whole nother look, which is just awesome. There we go. So look at how bright and how vibrant our roses are. English is a second language today. And I wanted to say hi to a couple people today. Because one, I know they're probably watching, because they always watch, and I so appreciate it. But I want to say hi to Donna and Rich. And I want to say hi to Linda and Carl. And to Brenda Owen and a bunch of the girls. Deb Daniger, Julie Thacker, Denise Van Newkirk. Because I know they watch every Saturday, and I appreciate you very much. So, look at our vibrant roses. Awesome. Now, remember what we did to the leaves. We took those neons and we mixed them with a little bit of white. Now, you can do the same thing with the roses. Just add a scribbly line in a few places to the edges of the petals, depending on how adventurous you are. The fun part about these roses, they're not realistic. And they are, a kind of creepy rose, so you can do whatever you want to them. That's the fun part. So I use my black gel pen an awful lot, and I'll probably use that in here too. So I'm going to make sure this is good and dry because we have to do our skull. And I'm going to base coat my skull with warm white. Now I'm using a rigger to base coat this because this is a tiny space, and given a larger brush I'll just make a mess of it. So I'm going to use my rigger. It needed a little skull. I was looking for a little bit of bling to glue on here and couldn't find any. I went through my stash. I couldn't find anything I liked. So I thought, you know, if I can't find what I like, then I better not put anything on there. I had a bunch of different things, but none of them screamed that it needed to be on here. And if you're anything like me, it's got to be talking to you. It has to be talking to you. There we are. So almost there. I just want to round out these eye sockets a little bit. They're a little too pointy. And make sure I've got lots of white in place here. Looks pretty good. I think everything Halloween should have a skull on it. That's just me. So I'm going to dry that real quick. Make sure it's good and dry. It has to be good and dry. Here we are. Now I'm going to use my small angled shader. I'm using a 3/8 for this. And a little bit of asphaltum. And I'm thinning this out quite a bit because I don't want my skull to be too dark. So just at the temple by the eyes, I'm going to put a little float like so. And I'm going to repeat that just under the eye and at the jawline. Just a little float like that. Bring it forward. I'm trying to find the camera. There we are. Just so that it fits in there nicely. There's a little V-shaped float goes underneath the nose. And then sort of a little U-shaped one that goes here. I'm going to soften that. And I'm going to dry this, and then I'm going to add a final shadow to the left side of the head. Like so. I just wanted the left side of the head to be a little darker than the right. And then I'm going to put a little highlight of warm white on that on the right side, just a little brighter, just to give him a little more oomph. Now, for the inside of the eyes, because it's all black, I like to do this. You can put just a white dot in each eye socket, and you can leave it at that. But just to make them a little extra creepy, I put a little dot of lamp black in the center of each of those white dots, and it just makes them look a little bit creepier than usual. So we're going to dry that. And as I said, it's just a little dot, but you can do this or not. It's entirely up to you. If you prefer, oh goodness. I kind of like it. I'm going to make the other one a little bigger. There we go. I'm just making a mess now. There we go. So, you know, he's kind of watching the parade, if you know what I mean. So now that I've messed up his eyes, I made them a little bigger than I wanted to. But at least they match. But now I'm going to do something else because I think he needs to look a little bit more realistic. So I'm going to take a little bit of warm white. And I'm going to put a little dot of white on the upper right of the black dot. Just makes them look a little more realistic. There we go. Well, as realistic as it gets. Now, I'm going to grab my gel pen, if I can find it. And I'm going to add my squigglies to my rose. I do this with a lot of flowers because I just like the way it looks, but that's just me. If you don't care for the squiggly line look, then don't do it. It's entirely up to you. I never get bothered by that. If somebody doesn't like it, that's okay. It's not for everybody. So for me, it's just fun. This is a very relaxed and uncomplicated piece, I find, and I kind of like the loose look to this, putting in these squiggly little lines to create the edges of these petals. Just helps sort of redefine